Hello, I'm Erk Brook, remember me? This is the first episode of Erk Pod for 2026. Hello! Coming to you for the moment at least from the Tumble Club laundromat here in Newcastle. So let's go inside. I am here to do my laundry. It's a rather cool place, this actually. One of 3 tumble clubs at the moment here in the Newcastle area. With another one just up from my house actually. So here we are, and the funny thing is at the moment it's just gone 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, the 27th of March 2026, and I am the only one here, which is a little surprising, but here I am. So let's have a look. We've got washing machines here, the ones with the red tops. You don't have to add your own detergent, it automatically adds the detergent. And then the ones with the green sticker at the top, that's where you can add your own detergent. And behind me we have the dryers. So there's small dryers here and there's larger dryers that we're going to go into now. So what I like to do, especially if there's nobody around, like there is nobody around now, is that I've got all my laundry ready to go, and so I'll use 3 machines at once, and that'll be a lot quicker. So I've got my washing here ready to go, work uniforms, some bedding, a mat for Bear, my cat, and so let's get washing. Alright, our washing is almost complete. I have my blanket for Bear. I'm not going to show you the other side because it's gross, but they've got a special machine for pet blankets. So we'll just put this in. Alright, so I need to remember machines 25. Machines 1, 2, 3 and 25. So we have a machine here. So you put your details in if you're a member of the club, so you can get discounts sometimes on your laundry. And then what it will show is the machines. So you can select the washers or the dryers. I'm on the washers at the moment. So 1, 2, 3, and then the pet machine. So it will cost me $20 for the 3 big machines and $11 for the pet machine. So it's going to load up the machines now. Tap and go. Like my jersey. More about that in a minute. So it will process, and then we will start washing. So it's sending the value over to the machines. So it's going to do that now. So we're going to select our wash. So pretty dirty, so an ultra wash, normal cycle, hot water. 27 minutes, push start, repeat the process with the other two machines. And we'll press start, and then we'll go over and we'll do the same for the pet washer. So the pet washer will be done in 35 minutes and the others will be done in 27 minutes. So we've got time to go outside and have a bit of a chat. So as we'll see on this episode, it's been a wee while since we've had an episode, and there's a few different reasons for that I'll talk about on this episode. It's a not bad Saturday afternoon here in downtown Mayfield for any Australian listeners or viewers here in Newcastle, 5 minutes away from my house. I actually don't have a washing machine or a dryer, so I don't have to pay for either of those, or the extra electricity or the extra water. So I quite like coming here. So not that I'm going to make a major point about talking about the reasons behind these prices because of the ongoing war in the Middle East that's affecting oil supplies. But I just thought that I'd show the prices here as of Saturday afternoon, 27th of March. The most basic form of unleaded, which contains ethanol, is $2.52.9 a litre.
You need to be able to check your prices at a time like this, and the New South Wales Government app Fuel Check allows you to do that. Where I'm standing at the BP, the price for 98 octane is $2.78.9 cents a litre. And across the road at the United, an independent, $2.72.5. So there's a big difference just from one side of the road to the other in this instance. And a little bit further up the road, you can compare the price without actually having to go further up the road. I wanted to compare the price between Australian cents per litre and American dollars per gallon. On the left is the Australian, and on the right is what you would pay if you were paying by the gallon. For unleaded plus ethanol, 252.9 Australian, 12.64 a gallon in America, 254.9 for unleaded 91 in Australia compared to 12.74 for a US gallon, 278.9 for ultimate 98 or 13.94 a gallon in America. And for the diesel, which has seen the biggest increase over the last week or so, last fortnight or so, 3.23 a litre or 16.64 a gallon in America. So that's an easy way of looking at it from an Australian point of view and an American point of view. But let's compare to what I would be paying in Newcastle compared to what somebody in San Luis Obispo would be paying over there. And I'll look at the per gallon prices there. According to gasprices.aaa.com, the current average at the time of recording is $5.94 a gallon for regular, $6.61 for mid, $6.37 for premium, and diesel $7.31 a gallon at the time of recording. The average prices, but what I'm about to show you is how much in this area the cost has recently risen. So it's a big difference, $7.31 a gallon for diesel compared to my mass. The Australians are paying equivalent of over $13 a gallon for diesel. You know, there are a lot of things that are different, taxes, etc., excises, but we will have a look at what some of the figures have done recently. So from the same website, just looking back, I'll just look at the premium and the diesel prices. A year ago, premium was $5.26 a gallon. A month ago, it had actually gone down a bit, $5.16. A week ago, it shot up to $6.18. The day before, at the time of recording, $6.36, and current average $6.37. But for diesel, the price has gone up a lot more. And considering the amount of diesel that trucks, for instance, have to purchase, the price rise isn't insignificant. So a year ago, diesel was going at $5.30 a gallon. A month ago, $5.33. A week ago, $6.82. Yesterday, on average, at the time of recording, $7.18. And the current average of $7.31 a gallon from San Luis Obispo. And I dare say that this is the situation around many places in the world, and also many places everywhere. Alrighty, let's try this. I was going to record me, like the time lapse that I featured before, but this time taking the things out of the washing machine and putting them into the dryer. I figured out a heaps better angle. Then some people came into the laundromat, so that wasn't appropriate, so I didn't record it. So anywho, where have I been? I should take off my hat, and hang on, before I take off my hat, I'll have my hat on and there's my jersey to explain why I'm wearing the hat and the jersey. I'm a hockey fan, as some people know, some people may not know, but I'm a hockey fan. But I don't go for the team whose merch I'm wearing. I don't go for the New York Rangers or even these guys, the New Jersey Devils. Now, a couple of seasons, about 3 seasons back now, they put out what they call an alternate jersey. So what often happens is that a team will have their home jersey, which is their colourful jersey. In the New York Devils case, a red jersey. With a little bit of white and a little bit of green. That's their main home jersey that they wear for their home games. And then when they're travelling to other venues, they'll have their away jersey, which is basically all white with a little bit of red, a little bit of black. And the home team wears their colourful jersey there. But sometimes what they do, and sometimes it's a throwback to an older jersey, or it's a different colour that they use, or it's a theme night or whatever. And so they did their alternate jersey and they called it the jersey. And they did this, and it got a lot of media attention. And so, me being me, with my sense of humour, I thought I would like one of those jerseys. And then I wondered, in Canada, would they call them sweaters? Well, that joke wouldn't work because it's the New Jersey Devils, not the New Sweater Devils, but Canadians call hockey jersey hockey sweaters, which to me makes absolutely no sense. And so they put out these jerseys, and it was a bit of a joke, but some people got onto it, and the Devils actually sold these jerseys and played in them, but this will be the last season that they'll be wearing their jerseys. So later on, as a promotion, to go along with the jersey, they brought out the hat. And so I got these separately, and I thought I have to have the jersey and I have to have the hat. And I've actually worn the hat at a couple of ice hockey games here in Australia over the summer. Our summer's now ended, and probably by the time this episode comes out, we'll be back to normal standard time and not summertime or daylight saving time. So for this next bit, to tell you where I've been, I should put on my Ice Hockey Australia hat and tell you a bit about where I've been. Okay, so it's not a hat. I don't have an Ice Hockey Australia hat. I only have an Ice Hockey Australia beanie, or as the Canadians would call them, a toque. But it's too warm for that, so let's just put the hat back on. So over the summer, I've been rather busy. So the last episodes that I put out were the episodes that I recorded more towards the start of summer. So I recorded the days at the beaches, and it was partly of the festival recordings that I did, the Civic Theatre Open Day, the performance at the Newcastle Ocean Baths, and I finally got round to editing my day that I went to the Fighter Jet Museum and also Newcastle Airport. So I'm just experimenting with different recording setups in my van at the moment. So last things that I basically recorded for Erk Pod were at the start or just before the Australian summer. Couldn't say it at the time, but I can now. I was a little bit busy over summer, and I was commentating on the Australian Women's Ice Hockey League, which is something that I'd done since 2016 until the COVID years, until 2020. And then I was back into it for the first time in a long time since 2025. Now, it was a bit different this time around because I wasn't doing every single game. Our pool of commentators has increased a lot since then, which has been really good. Whereas I do every game in that season, I did 4 separate series. So I only did games that were based here in my home state of New South Wales. The Sydney Sirens, the women's team in the Australian Women's National Ice Hockey League, I did all of their games that were in New South Wales. So against the Perth Inferno, against the Melbourne Ducks, the Melbourne Ice, and the Adelaide Rush, I should have done a 5th series against the Brisbane Lightning, but those games got cancelled. So that was 4 series, 2 games in each series, so 8 games over the summer. But it was really, really good to do. And for the first time in a long time in the Australian Women's Ice Hockey League, I was actually in the venue that I was commentating in rather than doing it remotely. So that was a nice change. I was able to see and interact with the players, interact with the crowd, and all that sort of good stuff. So that was good. Really, really enjoyed it. People missed my commentary. Some of them actually said to me that the competition, which we nicknamed the A-Dub, the AWIHL, but nicknamed the A-Dub. People were saying to me that the A-Dub sounded like the A-Dub again because I was commentating in it. Because for a good 4 seasons, I was involved, and I was one of the people responsible for boosting the profile of that league. All of those games are still available, by the way, on the AWIHL YouTube, awihl.tv. They're all still there for the previous summer. The games you're looking for are ones where the Sydney Sirens are playing, and if you hear me, that's my game, obviously. But that was a lot of fun over the summer. Really enjoyed the feedback. Really enjoyed the interactions with people. Some people that I hadn't seen. Hang on, what? I think I've bumped my phone somehow, and I may be speaking to emergency soon. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens there. I think I bumped my watch here, my fitness watch. We'll see what happens, if anything. I may have to stop this recording to answer a phone call from 000. I'm not sure. But until then, I'll continue talking, shall we? So no, that was really good. Kept me busy over summer. I was watching all the games, regardless of who was commentating them, as part of my preparation. I was doing team sheets for my games, and also the games that the Brisbane Lightning commentary team were doing. Pardon me. So that was good. So that was good. And I needed that drink. So that was one of the things that kept me busy over the summer period. Another thing that kept me busy over the summer period was buying an investment property. Now, at the time of recording, it's not exactly 100% done yet, but we're getting close to it. Now, I started the process in the middle of December 2025, and realistically it wasn't the best time to start the process because a lot of Well, that was interesting. The recording did cut off, and I'll tell you why it cut off. There was a couple of reasons what happened there, and the first reason is that my iPhone actually got too hot, so it shut down the recording and shut down my phone. And I'll get back to what I was saying in a moment, but I had to let my iPhone cool down. Now, I do know that it's a problem sometimes with an iPhone, but it wasn't it's not even 50 million degrees. It's probably 20, 22, 23 degrees Celsius, so in the mid 70s Fahrenheit, I'm guessing, but not super hot, but the phone was hot because I've been recording for a bit, so maybe that's why. So the phone shut down. I also figured out that the message that I got was because I'd accidentally triggered an emergency alert on my fitness watch. So what it did when I set up the fitness watch, it obviously said to me, set an emergency contact. So I didn't know who to set for an emergency contact, so I set me as the emergency contact. So my watch sent my phone a message to say that I was in trouble, and then I just kept on pressing buttons until it says, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes, I'm okay." So it sent me a message to tell me that I was okay. Did someone say KFC? There's a KFC across the road, and also a pie shop that is part of a service station. Yes, somebody did KFC. I said KFC. So let's talk a little bit about what I was talking about a little bit earlier before my iPhone decided that it was too hot. And yes, I decided to buy an investment property. Now, I didn't necessarily start it at the best time of year. However, there's no really good time of year in a way, because it's always going to take some time. So I actually started the process in mid-December 2025, and I think that's where I got to before my iPhone decided that it was too hot. So what happened was that I decided to get an investment property, and I knew that there was going to be a break for the Christmas New Year period. I knew that office workers usually shut down a week or two before Christmas, and then depending on their business and their business structure and things like that, sometimes they'll come back in the first week of January, sometimes the second week in January, sometimes the third week. Depends what they do and how they structure their business. If they're only a very small business and they want a month off, and the period isn't, and the business isn't necessarily related to summer, they might take the whole of January off, for instance. So they might take from the middle of December to the middle of January off and have their holidays then, and stay open for the rest of the year. So I'll tell you how I managed to afford my investment property, and it's probably not the way that you're thinking, and in many countries you couldn't actually do this. Now, in Australia, we get paid and we have a fund, basically our retirement fund, but in Australia it's called superannuation, or super for short. In America, that would call a retirement benefit or a 401k, and I think that's because of the name of the form. So what happens here in Australia, which is unique and not done in many places around the world, is that every 2 weeks when I get paid, as part of my salary package, my employer and everybody's employer around Australia for people who are entitled to it, so it's not usually for casual people, but part-time and above can usually get it, they will put in a certain percentage of your salary into a fund that you can't access until you retire. Now, the retirement age many years ago, when I started thinking about it and knowing about this sort of thing, was 55 for women and 60 for men. It's more like 65 for women now, I think, or 60 for women and 67 for men. But it's in many industries, it's not actually mandatory that you retire at that age. In America, for instance, and in some jobs it is compulsory. Captain Jeff, the airline pilot in America, his industry said that you had to retire at 60. Whereas my industry, being a train driver here in Australia, there's no mandatory retirement age as long as I can keep passing my Category 1 and safety medicals every year. And I can stay as long as I want. In fact, in slightly sad news, We lost one of my colleagues a couple of weeks ago now. At the time of recording, it was actually a week ago. His funeral was yesterday as I'm recording this. He was 69 years old and he was still on the job because he wanted to be on the job, kept passing his medicals, but unfortunately he died suddenly. The bit that hit home for me was that I'd only changed over a train with him the previous day. But back to superannuation, a slightly happier topic. So every fortnight you get paid your normal wage, and then as part of that wage you get what they call your superannuation guarantee contribution. At the moment in Australia, for me, it's set at 12% of my total wage. So that's 12% of my pay that I can't access until I retire, and it's so I can retire comfortably and not necessarily need an age pension. There are some tax benefits involved, and depending on how much money you've got and how much you put in, depends on, you basically get paid a fortnightly or every 2 week payment, and depending on how much you've put in, and depends on how big that payment is and that sort of thing. It's very long, very complicated, very dry subject, but that's superannuation. And Australia is one of the few countries that actually has this type of compulsory saving, if you like. So even if you've got, for instance, a normal office job, or you're working full-time in a supermarket or wherever, there will be some money that gets put aside for you every fortnight until you retire. Then you can use it. But what happens if you go from job to job? When I started with the railways, I've only had one super fund up until now. So when you sign up, they tell you that the super fund that they used to pay you the money, or if you already have a fund, or if you know of a fund, you can tell them to pay that particular fund rather than the one they use. So I've been using the same one for over 30 years, and every fortnight, every 2 weeks, they pay me the money into that account, and I can't access that till I retire. For instance, in the last pay packet that I just got, they paid me over $600 for the fortnight into this compulsory saving, which is more than I would do for myself in terms of saving, and I can't touch that money. I do also have the opportunity, if I want to put additional money of my own into that account as well. But there are some ways that you can access that money, and a lot of it comes down to if personal hardship, or if you die before retirement, that goes to your estate, that sort of thing. But there's another way. In what's called a self-managed super fund, or SMSF, but the name self-managed super fund's a bit of a misnomer, and I'm using it to purchase property. So over the time, with all these contributions that my employer's made and all the contributions that I've made into it, I've got a fairly good balance, and so I can access that money to invest in property. But there are some catches to that property. I can't live in that property, or anyone connected to me, family, friends, partner, etc., can't live in that property. So I can't buy a property for myself in self-managed super funds and live in it myself. I can't do that. So it's an investment property. Now, typically superannuation funds, they will invest on your behalf, usually in the stock market, but I wanted some more control, plus I wanted something to show for it. So I figured out that the property I'm going to purchase I could basically double my super balance now by the time I hopefully retire in about 15 years or so. So what I've had to do, and this is all totally legal, is that I've had to set up myself as basically a company. I've had to set myself up as a company to manage the self-managed super fund. But it's actually a bit of a misnomer. It's actually a bit of a misnomer, really, because I'm not doing everything myself. There's no way I could possibly do everything myself. So what I have is I have a team of professionals around me. Okie dokie, I have finished my washing, I have finished my drying, so let's go back in the car and continue telling you about how I purchased my investment property. Okay, my washing and drying is done. Took about half an hour. Okay, my washing and drying is done. Took about half an hour for the washing in 3 separate machines, 45 minutes for everything in a large machine. I am done. So let's head to the basketball, and I'll tell you more about that when I get there. All right, let's go to the basketball. My very first time actually at a basketball game. But let's tell you about buying an investment property. Now, as I was saying, it's called a self-managed super fund, and with the self-managed super fund, you can actually invest in a lot of things. You don't necessarily have to invest in property, but property is probably the safest thing to invest in. You can invest in the stock market, which is what your basic super fund will do anyway. You can do that. You can do that. You can do other things like invest in cryptocurrency if you want. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea, but you can do that if you want. Now, as I was saying before, you're setting yourself up as a company, as your own super fund. It's a self-managed super fund in name, but it's not. But you do need, unless you happen to do one of the jobs that I'm about to mention, you really do need to be able to lean on a team, because it's complicated work, and some of it you are required to have other people do for you by law. So the first thing you got to do is think of your actual super balance. Now, in my case, I've been putting money into this super fund for over 30 years. So I've got in the fund at the time that I took it out just under $600,000. So over $500,000 I've got in there. So the first thing you want to do is have a look at your balance and then talk to a financial advisor. Now, the financial advisor will be able to tell you if you can actually afford to do it, because if you don't have enough money in your super fund, you won't be able to do it, or the lower amounts make it a little bit harder to get finance. Now, I'm not a financial expert, but I'll try and explain it the best way that I can for you. So you talk to the financial advisor. They have a look and see what your financial situation is like and what your financial literacy is like. Do you understand what you're going to do, basically? And would this work for you? So, for instance, you do have a mortgage, but this is one of the things we have to set straight. When I say you have a mortgage, it's not me personally, it's my company.
the self-managed super fund and the associated companies within it have a mortgage. Now, am I, as the director of said company, able to facilitate that? So, for instance, I would have the amount of my contributions that my employer makes going into that fund. So, last pay, for instance, I got paid over $600 a fortnight to go into that. So that's one thing. That's one thing going into it. Now, the next thing that would go into it would be your rent. Now, to use me as an example, I pay $700 a week rent. So every fortnight, I've got $600 a fortnight going from my employer into my super fund. And to use me as an example, you'd have $1,400 a fortnight going in to the mortgage that the self-managed super fund holds. So that's a pretty good start to be able to service that mortgage. Now, there are a whole heap of tax conditions relating to self-managed super funds. So what you have to prove is that you're not doing this so you can live in it, because you can't live in it. So one thing that I did is that the investment property that I found is actually not anywhere near me. It's actually in Melbourne, and so I have to keep a distance from it. So because I can't live in the property. Things that I claim in taxation, or the company claims in taxation, has to be for that investment property. I can't use any of it for personal gain or anything like that, because that would become illegal. So I need an accountant. So after the financial advisor says, oh, your finances are looking good, the amount of money that would be coming in to service the mortgage that the company has would work, I have to have an accountant, and the accountant works out the tax deductions, works out tax, does all the paperwork, etc. But what the accountant also does is set up the companies, because there are a couple of different companies and a couple of different titles and legal things that you have to do to have a self-managed super fund, and you can't necessarily do all that by yourself. Now, if you happen to be an accountant, well, that's awesome, but the majority of us aren't. So to get a mortgage, you need to find a mortgage after you find a property. So I've actually got a property advisor for me, and the property advisor actually found the property that I'll be purchasing in Melbourne. So it's a 2-story townhouse, 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom. It's very close to the city of Melbourne. It's about 6 kilometres, 3 miles away from the centre of Melbourne, in a growing area. And it was actually good that there were a few different places that he showed me. I learned about the different areas and how the funds, how the market's fluctuating in all the different areas around Australia. And Melbourne seems to be a good choice. There were a few different places that I looked at, but this was the first one that I liked the look of, that he found for me. So we did an expression of interest into the property, and it was actually available. So in order to get the mortgage, I need a mortgage broker, so I need a loan. So found a mortgage advisor. Sorry, not a mortgage advisor, a mortgage broker. And so they did all the hard work of comparing and contrasting all the different loans, etc. What's on the market, so I could get the best possible loan. Now there are some differences between loans for self-managed super funds and regular houses. The interest rates are different, and they usually need more of a deposit, which I have. But we're able to go through that process. So I found the property advisor first, and then I had him recommend me a financial advisor. He also found me the mortgage broker, and my financial advisor found me the accountant. My property manager also found me the accountant. Oh, sorry, no. The financial advisor also found me a lawyer, because I also needed a lawyer for all the contracts and all the paperwork. So I needed that as well. So where am I at now? So my superannuation went from my superannuation fund to my self-managed super fund, so that's there. I'm ready to pay a deposit on the property, $790,000. The finance will be approved by the time you're watching this, by the time I edit it. The contracts have been signed between myself and also the vendor, the person selling. So that's been done. There's a couple of inspections that need to happen, but they're in the process of being organised. And so by the end of April, I would have paid for an investment property, and now it's time to start paying it off. So it's been an interesting process. Quite a bit of time talking to various people, lots of emailing, that sort of stuff. I was pretty lucky actually that I found a place that I wanted to get into pretty quickly. So the whole process of my initial inquiries in the middle of December, taking into account the periods of the Christmas, New Year break, and having everything settled and doing everything and settlement, that sort of stuff, which means that all the money's been exchanged, is at the end of April. For me, in positive news as well, there's already a tenant in there who I believe will be happy to stay in there. So the house is not empty. So from day one, this house will be earning me money.
We're inside the Newcastle Basketball Stadium, currently watching the Newcastle Falcons women's team warming up for their game up against the North Bears. Due to copyright reasons, I've pretty much had to mute all of the audio that I obtain inside the stadium, but it will give me a chance to explain what I'm doing there as the ladies are warming up before their game. Managed to get a great seat right near the basket at this end where Newcastle were warming up. There's the scoreboard. As play is going to get underway soon, but that's the scoreboard, so it's nice and close to the scoreboard. There's a view of the stadium. It's an older stadium built in the 1960s. There's been a lot of controversy locally about replacing this stadium and updating the facilities. Apart from this court, which they call a show court, there's a whole different other courts. The ball got stuck. I've got told later that that's called a wedgie. And so we've got various players trying to get the ball out now. This is during warm-up, so there's lots of balls on the court, and there he goes, comes out. So that's awesome. So just moments away from getting play underway, just having their final last-minute chat. Now, what am I doing here? I was invited by a friend of mine who I work with to come to a basketball game. We're watching the women's game first. Newcastle are just completing their warm-up here. So I got invited to the double header. It was actually the first game of the season in the NBL 1 competition between Newcastle, who we can see here, and at the other end of the court are the North Spears. Women's first and then the men's game afterwards. So my friend invited me to the basketball. Previously, during the Australian Women's Ice Hockey League competition, I invited him to a couple of games. Now, he was sitting next to me and explaining to me what was going on, but there were times there where I knew what was going on, and then other times where I didn't know what was going on. But for me, importantly, I wasn't there to work. I wasn't there to commentate, so I was just able to sit back, relax, and enjoy the game and enjoy my mate's company. So we're having a look at the other end of the court now. This is the North Spears women warming up at the other end of the court. So they're warming up now. The officials are running up and down the court also warming up. So I had a pretty good view, picked a reasonably close spot towards the basket at one end. So a similar sort of process actually to what I was used to with hockey, how people warm up and then they have their game. They've obviously done all their stretches, etc. beforehand. Back at the Newcastle end of the court and just about to get things underway. So when my mate came with me to... now we're actually underway. This is game action with the Newcastle Falcons in blue and the North Spears in black. So both teams, their first game of the season. So when my mate came with me to the hockey at Erina, I was commentating that game, so obviously I couldn't talk to him during the game, but what I was able to do there that I wasn't able to do in Newcastle is I positioned him basically in front of me so he could hear my commentary, and so he'd have more of an idea of what was going on. And then during the period breaks, I would be able to have a chat with him and hang out and stuff, but I wasn't able to do that during the game. So I was talking about the stadium earlier. This is the show court where the NBL 1 teams play as they are now. The stadium did host the Newcastle Falcons in the NBL, but the Newcastle Falcons left the NBL. And NBL games of the top level of basketball in Australia can't be hosted here. The stadium itself is about 60 years old. We're looking at the show court, but to the right-hand side, behind the white wall on the right, there's a whole heap of other basketball courts. Apart from Newcastle basketball, Newcastle volleyball and also Newcastle pickleball are also located in the same building. So it was a whole heap of contention, which is still going on at the moment. The basketball stadium here needs to be rebuilt, and also the entertainment centre, which is one of the places that, for instance, the Newcastle Falcons used to play in the NBL, it also needs to be rebuilt. There's a whole heap of controversy about that project. The women's game ended with the North Spears winning 66-65 against the Falcons. It was a very good result for both teams. It was in doubt until the final seconds, the Bears winning by 1 point. So the women's game was on first at 5 p.m. and the men's game followed straight after that. I didn't see a lot of the men's warm-up because I was grabbing something to eat in the canteen. Can recommend the hot chips though. So a good win by the Norths Bears against the Newcastle Falcons. Very, very early on in the season. The second game of the season for both teams is actually being played live as I am recording this voiceover. After the women's was the men's, and we're about to have a look at some of the warm-up towards the end after I went to the canteen and got some chips, some hot chips. There's noticeably more people in the crowd now. If you have a look at nbl1.com.au, as we see some game action here, Newcastle in blue, the Norths Bears in white. The camera on the coverage on the stream is actually looking towards me, so you'll often see me on the camera during these highlights. So I'm shooting on the opposite side of the court to what the camera is. So it was also a very entertaining game in the men's game, and it was that good that it actually went to overtime, but the Bears got the win in overtime. It was a nice introduction for me to basketball. I've know of it, obviously, and I've seen it on TV. I've watched some NBA on the TV, played the occasional video game, but this is actually my first in-arena experience. Unlike hockey, for instance, where there's basically silence during the game and there's just music in between the play. There's a constant array of music depending on the situation that's going on the court. And the music is one of the reasons that I've had to mute the audio that I recorded because of YouTube's policy with copyrighted music, even if it is incidental and being played in the arena that I'm at. It usually alternates depending on if, in this case, Newcastle, the home team, have the ball or not. So it's basically just a constant wave of music. The public address announcer announcing goals, penalties and substitutions. I couldn't understand a lot of what was being said, but having said that, I don't know all the rules, so even if I could hear the PA announcer clearly, might not have made any difference to me anyway. Having said that, I didn't know the rules, but the audio in part could also be attributed to the stadium. Obviously, the audio equipment isn't 60 years old, but the acoustics, etc., of the building are. It doesn't have the facilities that the NBL teams, for instance, would have. At best, NBL teams may use this as a practice facility if need be, this sort of facility. The majority of spectators don't have physically allocated seats. The only actual seats that people can sit on are those in the corporate boxes. And corporate boxes compared to, for instance, what I would regard in a corporate box in rugby league, soccer, AFL, any of the big major sports is certainly different from what we could see here at this level of stadium. So at the end of 4 periods, the game was tied, which meant that the game went into overtime. And after 5 minutes of overtime, which the North Bears in white absolutely dominated. The final score was a 10-point victory to the North Bears, 80-70. It was a good game that was in the balance until the final seconds of regulation time, but overtime was certainly dominated by the Bears. Newcastle tried hard in overtime. A lot of the shots that they fired didn't connect, whereas the North Bears certainly managed to score a lot during overtime with a 10-point difference in the end. So I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know that you could walk onto the court after the games and kids were taking shots. And it was a good way to finish the game. And here I am. I was going to say it's centre ice, but it's not centre ice, it's centre court. And I really, really did enjoy the night. And it was good company and a good couple of games of basketball. Hello, big boy. Alright, you want some food? Do you want some food, boy? I know, Bear, it's been a long day and I haven't been here. I know. Hello. Want some food? You're not going outside, boy. It's 9 o'clock at night. Meow. Let's go get some food, eh? Let's go. Meow. Meow. Let's go. Let's get you some food. Hello? He's a good boy. He's a good boy. Want some food? Good boy. I'll get you some food. He's my good boy. He's my good bear. Good boy. Good boy. When I left for work at 5:30 this morning, he was waiting at my window, at my bedroom window, watching me go. Haven't seen him all day. It's been a long day. I didn't go home from work. I went to the laundromat as we saw. Hello, boy. Good boy. And then I went to the basketball. So yeah, it's been a long day, but it was fun. This is a test. This is a test. This is a test. Good morning. It is Sunday morning, the night after basketball. It was a great night at the basketball. I'm actually going to do another episode featuring what happened last night and how big the competition is that I was watching, but that's going to be on the next episode. Needless to say, I had fun. So we are in my garden. It's Sunday morning. It is just after 9:30 in the morning, and it's basically the end of summer, the start of autumn, or what the Americans would call fall. Now the sun is out. Sun is out and it's looking great. However, my backyard at this time of the day doesn't see a lot of sun. It's a small backyard. I have a rather large 2-story place next to me that cuts off a lot of my of my sunlight, other houses around and that sort of thing. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start the rehabilitation of my backyard and see if we can get the grass to grow a little bit. Here's me boy Bear. Hello Bear, you're not coming out because I know you just want to jump the fence. Hello. Hello, meow. Meow, I can hear you. Meow. So when I was living in my unit in Newcastle West, I had this pen for Bear and before that Meow to be on the balcony. But Bear doesn't really like it in there that much. So what I tried to do, I actually had it in 3 separate places since I've been here. So this is where it's sitting at the moment, and this is where it'll stay for a while because there's not a lot of sun, and I want to keep it there because what he would do, he would actually climb the fence, which I didn't think that he would do. So he needs strict supervision if he is in the backyard now. So I don't usually let him in the backyard unattended anymore. So we'll go to the original position. This is the original position of the cat pen underneath the clothesline. I don't come out here much, so that was a good place for it. As you can see, the grass doesn't really grow that much. Then I moved it to here, saying that there was no sunlight, so I moved it to here. But I did make the mistake of just letting the grass roam free. So there was a lot of grass, and I'll put a photo of, and I think there's some video too that I'll put up of how high the grass actually grows. So grass can grow if you leave it under.
So this is the second spot that I had
Considering that it's a change
Bear's
of season,
pen, and this is basically where I left it for all of summer. So the grass can grow,
we have
but yeah,
had
it
fair bit of rain over
got
summer.
too long,
There is
obviously,
grass wanting to
and I
come
do
up.
have an inspection coming up, so
some
I wouldn't be
areas,
able
but I'm
to
gonna do something
leave it
about
looking
it now.
like this. I'm not sure if I shot a video, but I did see when I put Bear in there, it was quite funny to see how he would react with all of this grass around him, because he does like eating grass and he does like exploring things. So I thought, yeah, he might like it, but it's more essential. It was more essential when I was living in an apartment, but I wasn't going to get rid of it just because I'm living in a house for now. Who knows, if I move back to an apartment sometime in the future and still have a cat, which I hope that I will, this will come in handy again. He much prefers to go roaming outside under supervision, of course, because I found out that I have to supervise my cat, but I knew that anyway. One thing that I forgot to mention when recording the section in the garden that I'll mention now is the massive water leak that I had out the front of my house. There's a small section of driveway that leads to my garage, and there's one that also leads to the garage of the next door neighbour. And in that section, in between the two driveways, is a small section of grass that has both of our water meters. Now, I didn't realise this for ages because the water was leaking underneath the ground. But there was one day where I was out there just walking around and I noticed all this water around my water meter. And I thought, well, that can't be good. So I had to notify my real estate agent, who notified a plumber to come out. But before we had the plumber come out, the water authority needed to come out because the leak was around their meter. Now, if they worked out that if the leak was coming from their side of the meter, between the meter and the street, they would have to pay for everything. But if it came from my side of the meter, from the meter towards the house, well, then it would be my problem. Well, my problem in the fact that I live here, but that's not, I would not have to pay that cost. That would come to the landlord, the owner, which ironically, considering what I said before, in another situation in a different house would be me. Coincidentally, when I reported this, the day after I received the water bill from the water company, and normally I use on average 70 litres, or I think it was 90 litres of water per day on average. However, due to the leak, that figure was 975 litres of water per day. So they essentially were saying that I went from basically a one-person household to a five-person household because of the water leak. Now, I'm in middle of discussions with that at the moment. I'm quite happy to pay for the water that I would normally use, but I don't think that I should have to pay for the excess water because of the leak. That's currently in discussion with my real estate and the owner. That reminds me, I need to pay my rent. So while it can be hard to tell in some of these photos, the ground underneath is extremely wet. So the water was obviously leaking for some time, but in the end, the water's come to the surface because there's just so much of it, and it was really boggy even just to walk on. The ground has dried out a lot since the leak stopped, and the grass out the front's pretty good because it receives a lot of sun compared to the grass out the back that we've been looking at. So this is in the front lawn where there's a lot of grass. One of my next door neighbours is fantastic. He has actually asked me, can he mow my front lawn at the same time that he mows his front lawn, because there's no fence between us and he likes mowing the lawn. And so I said, sure, you can do that. I'll let you mow my lawn as well. I know that can be a bone of contention between neighbours, especially if there's only a little bit of lawn between a driveway, for instance, and the boundary. And here is Bear.
Hello. Hello. Meow. Meow. No, you're not coming out. You think you can come out, but you're not coming out. I'll let you out the front later. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to get this thing that I got on Amazon. It's a grass aerator. Put it together myself. And the way that it works is that there's spikes on the bottom of it, and you push down, put your foot in there, and then I don't know if you can see the holes. I'll try and do it in a more obvious area where you can see the holes. So you can see some holes there, and that will aerate the ground. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to aerate the ground first. So here's a look at the spikes. So I think we're going to go to time lapse from here. All right, time to get to work.
Check that out. So there are other ways that you could do this as well. Maybe what I should have done is get the one that rolls along. Maybe do that. So I've just changed legs. I was using my right leg before, now I'm using my left leg to try and balance things out. So what there is at the moment, there's a lot of these runners that are going through here. So hopefully when the lawn grows, we won't see any of these anymore. There's two different versions of these. So I found out there's the ones that live below the ground and there's ones that live above the ground. This is one obviously from above the ground. They have different names, but I can't remember what the names are at the moment. All right, so I've okie dokie, pardon me, okie dokie, I have aerated the lawn. I've left some places unaerated so we can see if that actually makes a difference or not. So what I've got here is some lawn fertiliser. And the good thing about this lawn fertiliser is that I can actually connect my garden hose to it, and then the water from the tap, from the hose, goes into the bottle, and then it will spread the fertiliser over the lawn. So got my hose, but I don't need the nozzle. So I'll run out the hose. Don't need the hose out all the way because it's not a big backyard. Attach the hose to the bottle, clips on. So I need to turn the hose on. Alright, so I've undone the top. Oops. And there's the force. So what it is doing now, it is running from the hose to the bottle, and it's a mixture of water and also the lawn fertiliser coming out. So I'm going to start at the other end and then work my way up. So I did a similar process last week, but I did it with the weed spray. This is paper anyways under here. I don't know actually what are weeds and what aren't. So it's quite a convenient way of doing it. And it's on the bottle, it says that we should get noticeable results within a week. Now, when I lived in Sydney, I had a much bigger backyard, but I never had to do any of it because the backyard was huge and it got a lot of sun. But here, don't have a lot of sun at all until the late afternoon. So I'm trying to give it a helping hand. So this lawn fertiliser is a common one that you can get from a local gardening centre.
I got delivered by Amazon because I was getting some other things delivered by Amazon at the same time. So what I've got coming is a specialised range of lawn treatments that's on its way, because we're here within the next few days. So next weekend, probably on the next episode, we'll have a listen to if what I'm doing now is making a difference. Hopefully if this makes a difference, and then these for the other products that are arriving midweek. This one is local, here the same thing again. There's 40 components that will help you use if you can find to help with travel. The share of contrast is going to help you out. Yeah, this is about this. I haven't really noticed it, but I used to do it. The corn website called Cornhub, they had a system place on it where we signed up. So the company that I'm getting the lawnfare products from this week, hashtag not sponsored, is called Lawn Hub. But they set their logo up to look very similar to Pornhub. And so one of their advertising slogans is, no, we haven't been banned. That's the other phrase, that's what they're basically saying. It's not us that have been banned. And they've got to, they're really leading into the Pornhub thing when it comes down to their marketing and what they call each of their different products. And it probably reaches a market that you might not traditionally aim for, I guess. I guess it's 30 people like me. So I'm just going to use trouble. Going into the areas that I'm spraying compared to the area that I'm not spraying, which is inside the plastic. Now at the moment I can't let the residue out here because obviously there's a chemicals. Not that I was going to anyway, but you can't really know here while I'm spraying these chemicals. But we'll see what happens to the area that I'm not actually spraying. Who would have thought? Doing gardening on Erk Pod. Who would have thought? But I'm trying to do different things. Okay. That's really useful, like, if you think about it. In my life, but I did have an incident in January that was unfortunate and rather painful. I was taking my scooter or my moped or my motorcycle, depending on where it's off to, out of my garage to go to work. And I was moving from my driveway to the next door neighbour's driveway and put my bag in, put my helmet on, etc., and then ride to work. But the grass between the two properties was wet. I lost traction at like 2 kilometres an hour, and I actually came off my motorcycle. And so I've fallen off. I've fallen to my left, so from here I've fallen this way. But luckily for me in one way, but unluckily for me in another way, my rubbish bin was beside me, so I'm at a 45-degree angle. On my left side, I'm pinned by the garbage bin. I've got the pressure of the motorcycle on my right hand side and the force of gravity pushing it into me. So I was pinned by my ankle and also by my wrist. Now it was fortunate for me, even though it was early in the morning before sunrise and there was nobody around, it was fortunate that I had my mobile phone in my pocket, so I was able to get it out and call 000 for an ambulance. So what seemed 20 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. My feet also weren't touching the ground. I wasn't touching the ground, so I couldn't push myself back up. And now I'm not sure the recreation. But I couldn't push my way back up. So one paramedic on one side, one paramedic on the other side pushed me back upright. And then I was able to get off the scooter. So what that I ended up with a soft tissue injury to my left ankle, no break fortunately, and I also had a painful ribs again, no fractures luckily, and I took a month off work. There was so much swelling and pain, and even the bare brushing up against my ankle caused massive pain. So I ended up wearing a moon boot for the first time ever. I wore a moon boot and just basically elevated, rested as much as I possibly could. Did what I could. I'm relatively okay now. Sometimes I get some nerve damage. Like an electric box in the nerve damage, so things are repairing itself. Been basically a month since I've been back to work now. Ribs are fine. I want a bit of a pain management on the side splitter, so for half the night I've actually lying on my sore ribs. But apart from the occasional shock now that I get, the doctor did warn me that it will take some time to fully heal the soft tissue damage. There's not a lot of water and fertilizer liquid coming out now because we've almost used the whole bottle. What that did to having that half off work, I did a lot of gaming to simulated Erk, which was good, and I was able to progress with the property investment route that I was going on that I mentioned earlier. So it wasn't all bad, but the pain obviously was pretty bad at one point. I think it was interesting being in the moon boot. I've never made him one before. I just got one that basically covered my side. You can get one of those that goes all the way up. But it did help with my with stability, etc. So for the doctor, once a week, we confirmed that there was no fracture. There wasn't really much else that I could do. Apart from resting it, doing a little bit of walking, etc., but not going out of top. So it must be nearly out. It might actually be out. Yeah, so what we're doing now, we're just putting water with no liquid. So
So that's complete. I'll turn the hose off. And I'll disconnect the bottle. So that's me fertilising my lawn. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I've got a new sprinkler, again from Amazon. Here it is here. Has different settings. You can set to cone, full, vertical, jet and flat. So we might set it see what happens. We'll attach it. Alright, so I'll turn the hose back on. Let's see what happens. Oh, I didn't want it to come over this far. Alright, let's see what happens this time. I adjusted the settings. And there's also a lot of water coming out of the infection. I've got the hose attached to it. Alright, let's go again. So that's just going all the way around, which is not what I want. That's more of what I want. That was just stuff that's just going to work out. That's not going to work. Try vertical. All right, it's got different settings on it. Let's go. Doesn't seem to matter what I do, does it? I'll go back the other way now. So maybe if I put it up against the fence. This to me is a vertical. I think vertical should be doing these ones. Alright, so what I think I might do to end the episode, I'm going to have to read the instructions, which is typical guy thing I didn't really do. I'll attach the hose to the nozzle, there we go, and it's got different settings on it, so I'm just going to go around and make sure that everywhere is been watered rather. So I'm just going to go around and just water the whole thing. By the way, the Democracy Manifest Succulent Chinese t-shirt guy shirts are still available. Once the Australian Men's Hockey League season starts, I'm planning to rebuild the shop. Business has been slow, but I understand the economy that we're living in. But they're all still there. I haven't heard anything about the Succulent Chinese musical, if it's going to continue in 2026 or not. I've been told that after the cast and crew, I'll be the first to know, but we'll wait and see. The Newcastle Fringe Festival, which they appeared at last year, is almost finished, so they weren't at that. It'll be interesting to see if they go to the Sydney Fringe Festival. They weren't at Adelaide Fringe Festival, so we'll see what happens. With that. Shirts are still available. If you have any problems, there's an email on the site and you can email me. Use the code Erk Pod 10 for 10% off any purchase. So what's coming up with the almost of April as I'm recording, which is the final couple of days of March. I've had the start of the Australian Ice Hockey League coming up in mid-April. So that will be good. Unfortunately for me, that coincides with Spring Fest in the Hunter Valley at Maitland. So I won't be at Spring Fest this year. That's unfortunate, but hockey has more quality over things like Spring Fest. Just the way it is. So looking forward to it. It's going to be a big season this year. All 10 teams are back in the competition.
The rink at Macquarie in Sydney has reopened. So the two teams then, Sydney Bears and Ice Dogs, will be back in the competition this year. So that will mean that I'm busy commentating on Sydney Bears home game, Newcastle Northside home game when there's not a clash, and any other games that I need to do. At this stage, the initial plan is I'm doing 26 games for the season so far. That's the pre-season plan, and I'm doing 26 games. Each team has 15 home games, so I know that I'll be doing 15 home games for the Bears, 15 home games for the Bears, one for the Ice Dogs, that makes 16, and so therefore at the moment it looks like I'm doing 10 Newcastle home games when they don't clash with the Bears games, but we do have other commentators as well. My Newcastle partner in crime will step up to play-by-play when I'm not there. So a couple of my colleagues are returning from having last season off because there weren't as many teams, weren't as many games. Looking forward to a this season of the Australian Hockey League, Straight Ice Hockey League. The men's season kicking off in April and going through until the end of August. That is behind the paywall at ihl.tv. I'm also watching the final stages of the Professional Women's Hockey League in America and Canada. And so I've been watching that. You can watch that live at 3 on YouTube. PWHL or PWHL TV. No, it's not TV. So many addresses. PWHL.com is what I meant. And there's 8 teams across America and Canada. And it's had a real boom since the Winter Olympics in Italy. America won the gold medal in men's, women's and para hockey. So that's a huge one for American hockey. And needless to say, I don't think Canada's about it, nor too bad. But the Americans played well in all 3 formats. So what's coming up, as I mentioned, is a couple of weeks coming up for me. In the next week as I'm recording this, or the next week or two, I should be finalising details of my investment property settlement at the end of April, so that's going to be exciting. I took up an invitation and was selected to be a part of Rail RUSA Day. RUSA Day is an Australian awareness day, one of many Australian awareness days is there of mental health and asking, are you okay? Those kind of sort of cost doesn't always work in the next instance, that you don't have to wait for a specific day next year to qualify in any way to ask you, mate, are you okay? If you notice any differences in their behaviour or whatever. I'm actually a key support of this person
which I've used to not only benefit myself but also to assist other people as well. You could be absolutely fine physically, but if you're not fine mentally, you can get into some very, very, very dark places. And if you've got physical things coming on, there's physical things happening as well. Well, that's double. That's double as hard. Mental health, just like physical health, are things that you need to work on. So just talk, and I know this from personal experience, and it's one of the reasons that I enjoy podcasts is that you're not necessarily alone. Me talking about things to myself and also to others who care and who listen has helped me. I know that I've helped other people as well. So I've never been given like having a conversation stepping forward before. I've never had the opportunity to participate in these AIK days, or one that's coming up in April 26th, and every April is one specifically that's for the railway industry. There's one for everybody in Australia, which happens in September. A lot of people are critical of this particular program because they're basically saying that you have this one day and nobody cares for the rest. In some cases that's true, but in many cases that's not true. So I've spent a lot of time watering my lawn. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I'll do a basketball special to expand on what I saw last night and how big the basketball scene here in Australia is, which I had some sort of idea, but doing some research this morning really showed me how, and this is typical of any sport, you've got the top level of sport and then you've got all the different levels underneath that, and you might not think so, but basketball's bigger than I thought and had really given credit for. It's probably the easier way for Australians to get to America and play the top line professional sport. You'd have to say that basketball's ranked first, and then baseball as well. Not sure where baseball sits on that, but it's easier for basketball and baseball, and there's more Australians in the majors in basketball and also baseball compared to the NFL, unless you're a punter. Seems to be easier to get into as an Australian if you're a punter, but not so much if you're not on special teams. And then hockey, there's been basically one guy who was born in Australia that's in the NHL, and one other that I can think of that was born in Australia but didn't come through the Australian system at all. And that's probably, the NHL is probably the hardest of the four majors for Australians to get into. Anyway, I've been Erk Brook. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it. It's been for me, an interesting episode to record, the first of the year. So I'm going to edit this and put it up. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I'll leave it a week and I'll wait for my lawn supplies to arrive, and so probably next Saturday or probably next Sunday depending on when I'm working, but I'll do it at a similar time in the morning again, and while it's not hot, to do all this. And we'll see. I'll leave it at least a week. I might have to water again later on in the week, depending on what the weather does during the week, just to give this the best possible chance to grow. We'll see what results we get, and we'll compare and contrast, and then we'll treat it with the lawn hub. Anyways, look, thanks for watching. Ta-ta and farewell. Bye-bye for now. I see you, sir. You know your judo well. Ta-ta and farewell. Bye now. Bush transition.